So today on our podcast, I have come down to Fuengirola where Antonio has got his co-working here and he's come down to check out what's going on. I said it'd be a great opportunity to do a video, and there's a topic which is coming up a lot now because it's the end of the year. Well, for us it's getting close to the last quarter of the year, and a lot of our clients are asking about non-residence tax, especially people who are in the process of moving over, maybe have some sort of connection with Spain before they've actually moved over, maybe they own a property, whatever, and the non-residence tax is a question which always comes up. So the expert on that field is Antonio, and he's here with us today.
Hello.
So anyway, Antonio, yeah, it's our third podcast now, I think, isn't it, together?
Yeah, we've done a few.
Yeah, and we plan to do a few more as well.
It's a pleasure to come back to your channel.
It's funny because the last time we sat here, we did our video for the driving licenses.
Correct.
And we have now just hit 200 driving licenses. So there you go. Well done. So I think that was about a year and a half. So we've not done badly.
More or less. Not that bad.
Brilliant. Right. So let's crack on then. So first of all, Antonio, what is non-residence tax in Spain?
Okay. The non-resident tax, which is the model 210, is the equivalent of the standard tax done, but in this case is for non-resident. The model 100 is for those that are resident, and the model 210 is for those that are not resident for this fiscal year, which I remember that in Spain is from January to December, not from April to April.
Right, so when I do my tax return, it's a model 100?
Model 100. Your tax return as a resident is the model 100, correct?
Okay, yeah. Brilliant. Excellent. So there you go. So there's two, well, I don't even know the model I present. Antonio does all of that for
That's
me.
our business.
Just this is what you've got to pay this year, Chris, that's it. So anyway, the question really then we've got is who has to actually present the non-residence tax? So in what circumstances would someone need to pay this? Yeah,
well, for that it's very important to determine if an individual, if a person is resident or not resident from a fiscal point of view. One thing is to have the residency that you manage very well on the foreign office to get the residency or the non-lucrative visa or whatever way you access to the residency. This is the residency, but then a separate thing is the fiscal residency, which has to do with the tax office, and it depends on how many days you've been living in Spain for this fiscal year from January to December. And if you are less than 183 days, for example in 2025, if you've been less than these 183 days, you are considered as a non-resident. There are other circumstances to consider, but this is the main reason to be or not fiscal resident. So if you are below this limit of days, you are considered a non-fiscal resident. But if you have interest in Spain, like if you own a house, or basically the main situation is that when you own a house and you can use it for your own or rent it or even sell it, which can cause a capital gain. We'll talk about all that. In these few circumstances, you have to pay obviously some taxes. So to pay these taxes, we have to use the model of non-resident because you are non-resident. So we cannot use the standard tax forms. We have to use these specific ones.
That is a very, very good point, because there's always this confusion about fiscal residency and physical residency. You know? So the physical residency, whether we always talk about, we can break it down simply into two types of residency. So you have residency, which is the European, which is people who have registrations here.
Correct.
Which is still the piece of paper, so you're a resident, but it's a registration. Or non-Europeans who have to get permission to be
Correct.
here. But either or, in both circumstances, if you have an asset in Spain, then you could still have a non-residence tax liability.
Correct, exactly. It's exactly like that. So if you own a property, for example, if you come to Spain, you buy a house, you are non-resident, for example, now we are in September recording this video. If someone comes to Spain in September, hasn't been in Spain before during this year, obviously this person is not going to rise the 183 days. So for 2025, or is not going to be a resident in Spain. So then for 2025, for the period of time that if this person buy a house, for the days that owns this house in 2025, we will have to submit the year after, in 2026, we will have to submit the non-resident tax to pay the input tax of this house. Because if a person is a non-resident, the house in Spain is not the main residence. The main resident is somewhere else, in the UK, in Ireland, whatever. So the second home, the third home, pay taxes, the same that in the UK and the same that in most European countries. So you have to input tax, a percentage of the cadastral value of the house has to be paid to the tax office every year. It's not that expensive. It's usually a few hundreds or even less. It depends of the value of how big is the house and what it is. Not the market value, but the cadastral value of the house, which usually is much lower.
Right, so you basically, if you are non-resident, don't live here, own a property, you have to pay a non-residence tax, whether you rent it out or you don't rent it out. There's an imputed tax on that property.
Correct. It is different. If we are non-renting the place, we have to do this calculation of a percentage, which can be 1.1% or 2%, depending how updated is the cadastral value. But if you are renting the place, then we have to see how much are the income of this rental, how much are the expenses, and well, in that situation, there are differences between being European between being a European resident, like living in France or Ireland, or living out of Europe, like in the UK. I don't know if you want we go.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting because I read something in the newspaper recently about that there's certain elements that people from the UK can't write off.
Can't people from the UK or for any non-European country, with it doesn't matter the nationality, where there is a little bit of confusion sometimes with the clients on that point. It doesn't matter your nationality, it matters only your residency country, okay? Your residency place. If your residency is in the UK or in any non-EU country, firstly, the tax rate instead of 19% is 24%. Even more important, you cannot offset any expense, which means that if you have a rental in Spain and you, for example, have a rental income of 10,000 euros and expenses for 5,000 euros, you have to pay taxes for the 10,000 euros. You cannot offset any of the expenses, even the mortgage or electricity or water bill or taxes or whatever you have to pay. You have to pay for the gross income, a percentage at 24% over the gross income. Right. So this is something that after the Brexit, obviously, the Spanish tax office and the UK tax office are trying to find a solution for that, but it hasn't been found yet. So
I did read something in the papers that they were trying to find a solution, but at the moment, that's it. So if you don't rent your house out, it's an annual declaration?
It's an annual declaration. Previously was quarterly. From last year, I think from January 2024, is yearly. I mean, now it's yearly, no doubt.
Oh, even if you rent the property?
Even if you rent the property. Before, in 2023 before, if you were renting the property, you have to do a quarterly submission. Okay. But now, in any of these two cases, we have to do a yearly submission anyway, which is done. The difference is that if you're renting the place, the submission has to be done the year after, but very important, before the 20th of January. Okay. If you are renting. Yeah. If you are non-renting, you have to do the submission the year after, but until the 31st of December. So usually we manage that during the year when we are not that busy with the quarterly forms, out of the time of the quarterly forms. For example, the next period for managing quarterly forms for us is October. So for example, we used to manage those that are not done yet. We usually manage that in November, for example. Right. After when we are a little bit less busy with other quarterly form submissions.
Okay, so it's basically, which would be the case of most of our clients, where they own a property in Spain, if you owned it for the whole of 2025 and you weren't a resident in 2025, then you've got until the 31st of December 2026 to pay tax.
If you own the property for the whole 2025, or for a portion of it. Even if you bought it now, for example, in September or in December, you have to pay we have to do a calculation for the days that you own the place on that year. You will pay less taxes, obviously, because you owned the property less days, but you have to pay anyway. We'll do the calculation
So anybody who's bought a property this year, even if it's on the 28th of December,
everybody has to pay taxes.
Everybody has to pay tax. They've got until the 31st next year.
Tax and death, you know.
yeah, we do. Yeah, two good businesses to be in.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's clear. So everybody owns a property. So how much do you actually pay then? You touched on it. So it's 19% for Europeans and 24% for non-Europeans.
This is when you are renting. When you are renting, you have to pay 19% over the profit if you are an European resident, and you live usually in France or Sweden or Ireland, and you are non-resident in Spain, but you own a house that you come sometimes during the year, but you are non-resident, then you have to pay, in that situation, 19% over the profit. In that case, we can consider the expenses. We have to do the accounting of all these expenses and keep records of the bills. This is very, very important. So those that could be listening, if they're renting a place, it is very important that you keep records of all the official facturas, official bills, to not to have any problem with the tax.
That's a good point, because a lot of people pay cash.
If you pay cash, you cannot offset.
You can't offset bills.
Well, it doesn't. It's not a matter of paying in cash or not. It's a matter of getting the official bill. You can get an official bill from a plumber or electrician or whoever. But if you get an official bill, you can pay in cash. If it is less than 1,000 euros, you can pay in cash. But if you are given the official factura, it's an official expense that you will be able to offset. Always, you are an European resident. If you are a non-European resident, then you have to prove how much are your income from this rental, but you cannot offset, for now, you cannot offset any expense. So you don't have to, the only benefit of that is that you don't have to be worried about bills.
So, and for it to be an official bill, which slightly sidetrack it out, it must say factura.
It must say factura on it. Factura. This is very important.
And must have a number?
Must have a number, a date, your complete name, your complete identification number.
Yeah.
In that case, it should be your NI number.
Yeah.
But even with the passport will be fine, but always that you can provide your NI number is better. And very important, the address of the place. If you have different houses or different property in Spain, and you, for example, buy a washing machine for one of these properties, don't use another address property. Use the address of that property. So it will be when we have clients that maybe have 2, 3, or 4 apartments renting in the Costa del Sol or whatever. You have to determine which cost is of each property.
Right. Yes. So it relates basically
exactly.
to each
We have
one.
to do accounting of each of them separately. Actually, we have to do a separate form for each property.
Right.
It's not one form with everything, like with the declaración de la renta, with the tax return. That in one form we put everything together. With the non-resident, we have to do separate forms for each thing that you have to do. If you have 3 rentals and you sold a property and you have to pay the capital gain, it's a separate one. If you, beside that, if you have a rental but part of the time of the year has been rented and part of the time of the year has been non-renting, we have to do 2 separate forms. One to pay the period of time that has been rented, and another one to pay the input tax for the period of time that has been empty.
Right.
So, but we know. I mean, this is something that is not really useful for the client to know.
Yes.
But just for giving a little bit more information.
No, it's good.
Out of curiosity.
It's good to know, because that's what we're going to come on to, actually how to do it soon. But I'm going to. So a lot of our clients are with a non-lucrative visa. People who come here to retire, and part of the things that we do is structure a timeline for them to come along. But a lot of people already own properties here. So say, for example, I'm having a conversation with somebody next week on my call day, and they own a property here, and our target entry date, say, is April next year. So they want to arrive in April. We get their visa, they come in April, we register their TIE card, which means that next year they're going to effectively become fiscal residents for the whole of the year. At what point do they stop paying non-residence tax and then they will become fiscal residents?
Yeah, they will. As we said before, the fiscal year is from January to December. So each year the cut is always on the 1st of January.
Okay.
So each year you have to see, you have to initially do an estimate of what do you think that you are going to do. If you are estimating that next year you are going to become to be more than 6 months in Spain, in advance we should submit the model 030 to report to the tax office that we are planning to be fiscal resident in Spain for the following year. This is something that can be done in advance if you know that rationally, if it is rationally sure that you're going to do that. If you are not sure, we can always do that later, but it is a little bit slower if we do it later. But usually in July or September, nowadays, in this month, we are submitting those that were not sure before in the year if they were about to be more or less of 6 months, and now maybe they have a stay from January and they say, okay, now I have met 6 months, so we do it then. So it's a little bit flexible in that way, but it is very important, and people tend to forget that, that people tend to think that this is something automatically that the tax office is going to check, and it's not correct. We have to do it ourselves through your gestor, the submission of the form to report to the tax office that you are fiscal resident on that specific year. Okay. After this submission, you don't have to do that every year. You have to do again this form if you become again non-resident to cancel your fiscal residency. But while you, a typical example, if someone come now in September and buy a property or already owns a property for 2025, is not going to have more than 6 months in Spain, so we will pay the non-resident tax up to the 31st of December.
Okay.
And from the following year, for 2026, we will do the standard tax return as a fiscal resident, which in this case, it will be done in May or June the following year, 2027.
Right.
Because it's the yearly tax return is done, the standard one, those for residents, are done in May and June, as you know very well. The year after. Okay.
Don't remind me.
We have just done that this year, at least.
So that's it. So one of our clients now, that's if they were coming over, they're talking to me, they own a property, we're looking at becoming early next year, they're coming in to be residents, then they have until the 31st December next year to pay this year's non-residence tax, and then the following year they'll continue paying the Modelo 100.
And not to scare anyone that is listening to us and haven't done anything of that for years and owns a property, I have to say that if the tax office hasn't sent you a letter yet regarding this problem, regarding not being paying this tax, it's possible to do the last 4 years with a late submission that you will obviously pay a little penalty for the interest for the late submission, but it's not that expensive if you do that voluntarily.
Right.
So I advise to someone that hasn't heard about that, because maybe it's a very typical case that I see every week, that a person comes and say, no, I pay my taxes, but what they are paying is only the council tax,
the IBI,
and they think the ABI, and they think that that's it, that's the only tax that they have to pay as a non-resident. That is not correct. They have to pay the non-resident tax to the tax office, to the Spanish tax office. The ABI is for the town hall, and the tax, the input tax of the house is for the government tax office, the national tax office. So if you are in that situation, it's better to update, to submit the last few years, because the amount is not that high. But if the tax office realized that you haven't done that, they put beside the penalties of the late submission, they will put fines and more extra cost, and it could be near the double of the tax that you should be paying.
So it's better late than never.
It's better pay late than wait until they come, because so they are doing that now very frequently. People are the tax office is realizing very easily now, with all the help of AI system that are being improved in the tax office. They just see that this property is not being declared in any tax form as a resident or non-resident, so there is nothing with this house, and it has to be somewhere. So it's very easy to see, okay, who is the owner, and send a letter saying why you are not paying any tax for that. So these kind of letters are coming very frequently nowadays. So it's better to put all the situation updated before you get this letter.
Right, so it's better to update your situation. The tax office is quite efficient here. I mean, there's
Quite. It's actually probably is one of the only few. The tax office and the sun is probably the
two guarantees.
the two things that you have guaranteed to get contact with in Spain.
So on that note then, so we've been through who needs to pay it, how to pay it, etc. How do you pay it? So we're normally, now, as I said, I was joking aside before, I don't actually know the residence tax model.
You don't need to know.
I couldn't even tell you what the model is for the VAT or the quarterly returns because Antonio just tells me what we're supposed to pay, what we're supposed to do. And it's been like that for many years. But if you do want to present this, then you can use a gestor.
Obviously.
We always work together on many fronts. And I certainly, when you're dealing with the tax office, personally, I would suggest that you get somebody to do it for you. I've been doing it for 25 years. I've been paying my taxes in Spain, and for the last 20 years, Antonio has been doing all my tax stuff. And a lot of the reason is because if you get it wrong, okay, the recourse is just incredible.
Yeah, mistakes used to be costly with the Spanish tax office. Yeah, unfortunately. So, well, it is important. I advise everyone to get a gestor. Obviously, if it is us, we'll be more than happy to help you.
Yeah.
But if it is not us, try to find a good professional to do it. Because it's very risky because laws are always changing. I
didn't know that it switched from quarterly returns. I thought it was still quarterly returns.
Yeah, they are always changing everything, so it's very difficult to know, and there are a few things on the form that if you don't fill it properly, you can get a letter from the tax office very easily. So for the cost that you usually have, it's not worth it to try to do it, waste your time on the bar or the beach. It's not for the cost that I have. In my opinion, it doesn't matter it doesn't work. It's not worth it to try to do it yourself.
No. And what sort of documents will you be?
And your brother-in-law is not the best person to do it either.
Bob for the bar. So what sort of documents will you request from people when you're looking at?
We usually, it depends if they already are clients. If they are brand new clients, then we obviously need the TI card. In that case, if it is for the non-resident, they won't have TI. It will be the NI certificate, the passport, and the property. Usually, if possible, we always request the title deeds to check some things on the property that, when we do the non-resident, we do some checks on the property for free, because sometimes we detect potential problems that you may have in the future if you want to sell a house. So we take a look of the title deeds to report to you about that if you don't know these issues, which usually is very useful for client, this service, and it is something that we do for free, including in the service. Besides that, very important, we need to get the last year ABI, the council tax receipt. Usually we manage with the client to get the digital signature, so then we can download all this information from the cadastral office, so the process is much more smoothly for them. They don't have to go to look for the receipt or get the information from the province tax office. What we do is to get the NI certificate and the passport, and if they don't have a digital signature, we set up this for them. And from that point, we just do everything. The client don't have to do anything else. We will report, we will download our information, we calculate the tax, we report it, and we say, okay, that's the tax. How do you want to pay that now, or you want to wait a month or something to do it? Because we have to do it during the year. The deadline is the 31st December. Obviously, we advise them not to wait until the last couple of weeks, but it is flexible. We can do the calculation, and the client say, okay, pay that in October or November or whatever, and we do that, or just do it now, which is the most common, because the tax usually is low, so we usually do as we go.
I think that's sometimes if you can afford it, and relatively people are moving over, will have a budget, then it's best just to leave it done and dusted, and just set it in your calendar, and you remind clients every year. Once
we do it 1 year, the years after we will send a reminder saying, okay, we are now, this is the moment to do it. Do you want to do it now, or do you prefer to wait until the next window? Because as we said, for example, we do that, for example, usually in February, We do a few. Then in March we are focused with the model 720, which we can talk about that in another video. And then we have in April quarterly forms. In May and June we have the yearly tax, the standard. So usually September is another time of the year where we manage that, and then November. So usually it's February, September, and November.
Right.
So those that could need that can contact with us right now, which is a very good moment to do it now in September.
That's actually a very valid point, and a point that I make a lot on my weekly updates as well is when you're dealing with professionals, just be aware of what part of the year we're in. So if you look at quarterly returns, when you're trying to deal with a gestor and a quarterly returns, you've got to remember on the first of the month when the quarterly return starts, there's, whether you like it or not, there's going to be an avalanche of work. So if you've got a question about your tax in 2027, you know, for a gestor, and you're not going to get it answered, but they do have these low periods, what you're explaining, where that's when you focus on looking at new clients and stuff like that.
Other firms.
And other businesses and stuff, so.
Correct.
Brilliant. Okay, well that's it. No more to see said. Thank you very much for coming back on our podcast. That's fantastic.
Thanks to you, and thanks for your audience, to your audience.
We are going to be creating basically a brochure very, very soon towards the end of the year. All these podcasts are going to go into an actual pamphlet which you'll be able to download. I'll tell you more about that soon. And also we have our weekly update now on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Spanish time, 5 p.m. if you are in the UK, and we'll just basically on those weekly updates we talk about everything. So we talk about the visa timings, what's happening with residencies in Spain. We also answer all the YouTube comments that we don't get to answer during the week. We have a food and drink section, we have our out and about section, and we also have our Jane Says section, because Jane, my colleague, she's always got something to say during the week and I think it should be heard. And then we also have a section where all of you guys who watch the channel share your experiences, photos and everything about living in Spain. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon for the next podcast.
Bye bye.